Hello folks, and welcome back to another Let's Code a Mining Turtle episode. This is Selek, and today, well, we are going to do a couple of things. Two things, actually. We are going to work on our excavate and try to finalize our excavate function today. And we're also going to start work on probably our most complicated function to date. And we're going to do it piece by piece. And it's going to probably take, I would guess it's going to take 2 episodes because I don't want another 40-minute episode. I'm trying to shoot for like 15-minute episodes. And so obviously a 40-minute episode is a super fail. So anyways, let us jump right in. So when we left off, this is sort of what it looked like. I'm pretty sure this is what it looked like when we left off. But there was one major, well, there's actually 2 problems with this function that I found. And so we're going to, I guess, examine those first. So first of all, if we were to run this function right here, and we're not going to run it right now, but trust me when I say what happens is this, well, we can actually probably just walk you through it. So what the first thing it's supposed to do is dig down, go down. And if that returns true, then it enters into this while loop, and then it starts doing the columns. And it works really good until we get to the end. So what happens is when we get to the end here, it actually does this one more time. So when we get to this part right here, which is, this is the section, remember last time, where we get the turtle facing the right direction. So when we dig down and go down, it does the right thing. So the problem is we don't want it to do this the very last time. We want it to stop. So we need to add one more condition here. So if I is, oops, wrong knot, is not the size -1. So in other words, anytime it is not at the very end, it's not the final I, then go ahead and do this. So let's see. Yep. Oh, I have the then. We're going to take all of these, shift them over 1, and add our new end. So does that make sense to you guys? If the size is, if I is not on the final column, then you can, is that right? Yeah, we call the column row. Yes. So yeah, if it's not on the final column, all the other columns do this. Not on the final, unless it's on the final column. Skip this and then do this right here. So that will get us in the correct position and do the excavate properly. So the other problem that we have is this right here. So last time I mentioned, I don't know what happens if you try to dig down and there is an air block there. Will it return true? Will it return false? Because if it returns false, then we have a problem. Because this whole statement will then be false. And that doesn't mean we're at bedrock. It just means we're at an air block. So I did some testing, and yes, it does return false if it tries to dig an air block. So after fiddling around a little bit, and again, there's so many different solutions for a problem that you find in programming, I'm going to show you the solution that I came up with. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to have so stick a pin in that, and let's go back to the second thing we're going to do, because we're going to do it at the same time. All right. The other thing we're going to add, and this is what's going to make it a better excavate. So right now, it's pretty much doing the same thing as the normal excavate, but we are also going to add a depth variable. So that way you can specify, if you choose, it'll be an optional variable. You can choose, hey, I just want to go down 16. I just want to go down 64. Well, you probably wouldn't want to do that. I just want to go down 30. You know, I just want to go down to a specific level. Let's say you wanted to go down to level 12, for example. You could do a 3x3 column down to level 12. So you could do a little math, figure out where you are and where you want to go. And, you know, at some point we might even say, you know, 2 level or something. And that shouldn't be, the math shouldn't be too difficult for that. But for today, we're gonna specify the depth. So we're gonna change up a few things. So instead of using this not at bedrock, we're actually gonna use is finished. So since we're starting off, we know that it's not going to be finished because we just started. And then we are going to have another Boolean, and we're going to say use depth. So if we want to use depth, this is going to be how we check for that. Now, after a little bit of experimentation, let's say you don't pass anything in. That means depth will be nil. So we want to say, oops, if depth is not nil and depth is greater than 0. So if you pass in 0, well, you're not going to go anywhere. Or it's just going to, sorry, it will go somewhere. It's going to do the normal, which is to bedrock. Now, after some more experimentation with this, let me show you this right here. Okay. So here is the function we're going to be working on. But what happens is, you see my little code here. If you put the depth greater than 0 here first, and it's nil, you will get an error. You'll get a runtime error saying, hey, you can't compare a number to nil. Can't do it. So, and that's also true if you just didn't have this nil part and just had depth greater than 0. So you're going to get an error if you try to compare nil to a 0 or a number. So the way you get around that is you ask it to check for nil first. If you compare it to nil first, not in the second part of the and, so if we flip this around, if we said something like use depth, depth equals depth greater than 0 and depth not equal to nil. So if you did this, you're going to get an error because it's going to check that first condition first. And if it returns false, it's actually just going to break out of it. It doesn't care about what the rest of the statement is because it's false. Anytime you anytime you have a false in an and statement, it's going to be false no matter what. So anyways, I hope that makes sense. Put the depth not equal to nil check first in your statement. That's what I'm trying to say. So back here, this is our statement. Use depth, making sure that we pass something in. And if we pass it in, it's greater than 0, then we know we're going to want to use depth here. Okay. And we're also going to have a depth counter. So we're just going to call it depth count for now. And that will be 0. Okay, so now let's think about this. If we want to use the depth, we're going to do something a little bit different here. We are going to have a local function. I'm going to put my local function down here at the bottom, outside of the while loop. And to declare a local function, there we go. You just type in local function. Pretty straightforward. And so what this is going to do is this is going to sort of black box or embed this function inside of our excavate function. In other words, this function will not be able to be called by any other function anywhere in the code. It's going to be hidden, tucked away. It's sort of like a private function, private method in Java. I believe you can do the same thing with private methods in C#. There's a whole lot of different ways you can do it, but for us, we are going to use this local function, and we are going to call it start next level. And we might come up with a better name later, but for now, we'll call it this. So our local function is start next level, and we are going to return a Boolean value with this. So thinking about our starting of the next level, this is another thing. This is a problem here. Okay, this is the problem that I ran into, and that's what you will actually see here. Exit. This is our little test, and I'll show you how this test works in a moment. Okay, so first of all, let's get back here and talk about this. So remember what we said about this being checked first? Well, if you encounter nothing but regular blocks, this is going to work forever and it's going to be great. However, if this encounters an air block, then it's going to return false, and it's just going to sit there. It's not going to do anything, and that's going to make us sad. We don't want that. So let's go ahead and we're going to check this in sequence. So we're going to make a local Boolean value called at next. So we are going to try to go down. That's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to see if we can go down, because if it's an error block there, we'll be able to do that. And then if we're not there, if not at next, then not equal, then we're going to dig, and we're going to dig down. Now, at this point, we don't need to assign a Boolean value to our dig function here, because that's not what's important. What's important is, can we go down? So let's try going down again. All right, let's end that. End, escape. There we go. Return at next. So thinking through this, what are we going to do here? At next, we're going to go down, assign that value. So if there's an error block there, we will have been able to go down. If there is a solid block there, we will not be able to go down. So then that was going to give us false. So if it's false, dig. So we are able to dig through regular blocks, not through bedrock. If we hit bedrock and we try to go down, this is going to return false. So we will know we are there. So this is going to be sort of our new at bedrock Boolean. And it's also going to be able to dig through air or go through air. So if it's air block, we won't enter into this if statement. We will return that we were able to go down, and we can go down. So again, this is sort of a bad, it's not a terrible name, but for our purposes, it is what we're going to be using to start our next level. So that's what we're going to call it. Okay. So going back up, we are going to, if use depth, then we are going to try to start our next level. And if that is successful, in other words, if we, I guess, aren't starting at bedrock, then we are going to increment our depth count, because we have gone down 1. Depth count plus 1. And we are going to use our is finished guy here. So is finished equals our depth. As long as our depth is less than or equal to our depth count. Let's see if that makes sense. So our depth, let's say we pass in 10. As long as this is less than or equal to depth count. That doesn't make sense. Why did I put that there? So as long as it is greater than or equal. Okay, so let's say we pass in a 1. Because we know what happens if we pass in a 0. We won't even be in this block. So if we pass in a 1, that will mean is finished. Okay, so yeah, it will be equal to 1. So we will definitely go into, because we're going to call this is finished now. Is finished. Finished. There we go. All right. So does that make sense? So we're going to go ahead, we're going to go down 1, increment that as long as it's, in the case of 1, equal, it'll be equal to depth count at this point. We will say this is true, and so we will enter into the while loop. Okay. Just had one of my signs backwards. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get rid of this line because we're not going to use it anymore. And let us check this. Looks good. Yep. Okay, so now here at the end, we need to have some intelligence of whether we are using the depth or we're just going down to bedrock. So if we are going to use the depth, so if this is true, keep hitting the W. My whatever finger, what do I normally use for that? My ring and middle finger on my left hand are getting confused. Get it right, guys. Okay, so then if we're using the depth and if we are able to go down, start next level, then we're going to go ahead and increment. I'm making up words. we are going to increment. I think I was going to say decrement and then increment, and just got confused there. So basically, we're going to do the same thing we did before. Is finished is equal to depth, as long as depth is greater than or equal, yes, to depth count. So I'm just double checking that. Depth greater than or equal, yes, okay. Pretty sure. And now, here, instead of just ending this, we're going to actually have an else. So if we're not using the depth, then we don't care about checking the depth. If we're not using depth, obviously. So we're just going to say is finished is start next level. And let's end that. Get rid of this line. Done. So now we just added some extra functionality to our excavate. We can excavate a certain depth. We can excavate a 10 by 10 by 10, for example. So let's take a look at this. This guy, our local function. Let's take a look at what that looks like in on our turtle. Okay, so let's go back and let's just throw this guy in our quick test. So we know what this is. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do our little local function, but we don't have to call it local because it's local. Anyways, because we don't have any other code in here. Start next level. And all right. And then we're going to have our local at next is, we don't have our go function, so we'll say turtle.down. And then we're going to have if not at next, then we need to dig. Dot dig down. And then we're going to say at next equals turtle.go. No, turtle.down. There we go. In that. And let's return at next. So we're going to return the Boolean value. Were we successful in doing this? So let's, instead of printing our use depth, let's print our start next level. All right, so let's save that. And let's look at this quick test. So what's going to happen is, if we can go down, we will, and we'll just skip the if block, and we'll return that, and it'll be great. If not, we're going to try to dig, and then try to go down, and if we can, we will. If not, that means we're at bedrock. So here we go. So let us delete all this, and just call it quick test. There we go. Do it again. Woohoo! And again. Yay! And then again. False. Can't do it. So that's it. So now, no matter what, air block or what, it's going to be able to go down. One of the things that we need to add in our excavate to actually finish it up is right here. I forgot to do this before because if we're not using depth, we do still need to go down. So we need to do the same thing that we did down here. So let's just go ahead and grab this. And this will make sure that we are in the right place. It's weird. In the right place when we start into our while loop. So we're going to dig down one and enter into our while loop. Very cool. Well, I'm very pleased about our progress today. I really did want to jump into our more complex function. It's called goToPosition. It's going to be very super important for our whole turtle, for this turtle program, but also for all of the turtle programs that we're going to be developing. So I'm very excited about it, but I guess we're going to have to wait till the next episode because this has been a little lengthy, a little bit longer than I hoped for, but I feel like I've covered this material clearly, and that was, I guess, more important to make sure I get through it in a way that makes sense as opposed to power through it and be confusing. So That said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope that you learned something. If you see something maybe you like to add, please, let me know in the comments. Feedback is always appreciated. Also, thumbs ups are fantastic. Even if you don't want to take the time to leave a comment, or maybe you just didn't find it anything to say, a thumb up or even a thumb down if you thought it was terrible, give me your response. I would really appreciate your feedback in that. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you all again next time.